start by looking at, I think, some of the career outcomes that the MBA is offering to candidates graduating from UK schools. It would be interesting to just learn about some of the companies and sectors that are most active, and any figures, placement figures that you can quote in terms of average salaries or placement figures, etc. I think that would be an interesting starting point. Louisa, do you want to start?
Okay. Well, I think there's no doubt that an MBA is a great way to accelerate your career. I'm obviously going to be speaking from a full-time perspective, but we definitely see with candidates coming through the full-time programme that it gives them the ability to either take a step up in their career, or if they're looking maybe more to switch function or to switch sector, or even maybe geography. It's a great way to do that, and that's where the global nature of the MBA can be so helpful, because you don't just have to stay in the UK post MBA. In terms of sort of placements and percentages, etc., the industry standard is for schools to survey their classes about 3 months after they've graduated. So typically around kind of January time is when you would see schools start to update their student data, January, February time. And I imagine most of us it's going to be pretty similar, sort of around 90% of students employed 3 months out. So the benchmark is, as I say, 3 months to see if people are employed. And in most cases that's people looking for jobs. About 90% are employed 3 months out. Bear in mind that sometimes candidates won't be looking for jobs for whatever reason. They might be continuing to study, they might have taken time off for family or personal reasons. So this data is related to people who are actually actively job seeking. In terms of some comments on salary, I'll give you some average figures from what we've seen. Typically, candidates come in on a salary of about 45,000. Base salary, and they'd be leaving, achieving something around 65,000 as a base salary. But I would just say, in terms of these figures, think very carefully about the sector that you're looking at, think about the location, because that does make a big difference. So, these are just sort of average figures. They will differ from sector and location. From the perspective of Cambridge, one thing I'd say we've really noticed is that the hiring trend, it seems to be industry, is really hiring. That's where we're seeing our candidates go. Of course, the faithfuls, the traditional sectors of consulting and finance are still popular, but where there is a buoyancy is industry. That's what I would say. So types of companies like Amazon, Google, but those sort of companies we're seeing are particularly looking for MBA graduates.
You've covered quite a lot there, actually. Some of the figures that are floating around there, so like the Association of MBAs has an average salary of 82,000, but like Louisa mentioned, you've got, so the spectrum is just so wide. You've got to look at the sector, the job function and the location. That really does have a huge part to play. Now, over the last few years, hiring has been challenging, but companies need good talent within their organisations. And in recent times in particular, there is a lot of focus on expansion and efficiency. And opportunities are going to come from these. So consultancy and finance, clearly that there is a tradition for hiring in these sectors. And from a consultancy perspective, this isn't just consultancy like PA Consulting, McKinsey. They've got structured MBA hiring programs, and they're very buoyant in that effect. And it's not just hiring post-MBA, but they're very active in the programs, offering internships. And for those programs that have got live client consultancy projects within them, then you know this is a foot in the door even whilst you are studying the MBA. There's also the consultancy in company, mentioned the words expansion and efficiency. So, you know, these companies need to ensure that they've got their own house in order, and then looking at international strategy, business development. Companies are looking for well-rounded individuals. UK programmes in particular can offer that international exposure. So agility, diversity, these kind of elements feature and are critical in the selection. So from a finance perspective, we've seen that private banking has actually been quite strong. And some of the growth areas have been around energy and technology. So BP, Amazon, eBay, Google, again within the programme and hiring after the MBA. Now manufacturing is overall on the decline. But you've got companies such as BMW that do have active MBA hiring that may be more focused around technology, strategy development. You know, there's so much going on in terms of like electric cars, looking at the wider environment, earthquakes and vehicles and using intelligence. So there are certainly lots of opportunities there. Mining and metals, very small, but actually from a salary perspective, it's high. So it depends how you want to position yourself. Are you looking to paddle in a wide competitive pond, or do you want to position yourself in a niche?
I've got something that I'd quite like to add. The first thing is that it's natural to focus on the salaries, the immediate career reports that students have on graduating from their MBAs. And, you know, a quick look at any website will promote those. I'd also look at the longevity, look at the trends sort of 3 to 5 years out, which you can find quite easily. Because a snapshot is great, but sometimes you want to see some consistency. And just to back up Fion's point about companies looking for great people, I think something that is stronger in the British educational tradition is, as well as focusing on a very rigorous curriculum, a knowledge-based curriculum, there's also quite an intensive focus on translating skills into practice. So look for internships, look for real relationships with companies, look for leadership development and the things that will turn you not just into somebody who's knowledgeable, but also effective. And I rather think that UK education pays close attention to these skills.
In terms of the industries, actually the biggest employer for our graduates the last couple of years has been BP. What is interesting is that they have taken far more women than men. And that is, I think, something which is changing in the industry, followed by Amazon and Jaguar Land Rover for us. So that those are the 3 top employers. Yes, in the city, yes, in financial services, but they're the staple diet. But I think the growth is going to come from other areas, and that actually the skills that you guys will be able to deploy are going to find a broader spectrum than has been the traditional outcomes for the MBAs in the past.
How do your programs help foster entrepreneurship, and could we also touch upon the visa rights for entrepreneurs, because I think that's relevant for international students?
Well, yes, absolutely. And, you know, London Business School is kind of passionate about enterprise, with incubator units, with businesses running across all different sectors, started by our bright graduates and supported by great faculty. But the visa situation is interesting, is probably a polite way to put it. So, from a UK perspective, we want the bright, talented minds who are going to create business. I made some notes for this simply because the visa picture seems to change almost daily, but this is just a snapshot of what is the graduate entrepreneur route under Tier 1. And this is for recent UK graduates who want to stay in the UK, and this will enable them to develop a genuine, credible business idea and establish a business in the UK. To apply for a Tier 1 visa, you need to be sponsored by the institution from which you graduated. And you can apply at any time during your MBA through a set application and interview process. And if you're successful in this, you'll get an endorsement number, which is kind of a similar thing to the CAS number that overseas students would get coming to the UK to study.
do your schools provide any funding or competition for funding for entrepreneurs, and how do you particularly cultivate skills for entrepreneurship?
Yes, Cambridge does provide some funding. It's through student clubs. They have competitions. So if that's something that you're interested in, then I'd encourage you to get involved in the wider university. There are student clubs that would be relevant.
I mean, I'm not sure if the question was linked to funding for the business side or funding for tuition coming into the programme. So Louisa has touched on the funding during the programme piece. So from a tuition perspective, we actually have scholarships available for entrepreneurs where you complete a competitive paper, and it's an opportunity to make yourself shine, and we want to reward those individuals. You know, we see entrepreneurs as being a huge part of the programme, helping the future of the class and so on.
Yes to a range of scholarships, though not all directed around entrepreneurship, and yes to funding for business ideas through an incubator unit, an investment management arm, and also a rather exciting period that happens this term, which is pitching in front of 100 angel investors, which is an outcome of our enterprise summer school.
Yes and no is the answer. As public institutions, we're not allowed to invest public money in entrepreneurial activities, but we do provide incubation units in the same way, where you can set up your business, you have no rent to pay for a year, and we support you, have free access to faculty, and so on and so forth. But direct investment by the school, no. Direct investment by alumni, yes.